Okay, we're here. We're back. We're in a new era. Um, Obviously, there's a lot to talk about, but either way, we're in it. We're in it. We're in it right now. It's great. It's great that we're here. We've been going through it, but hey, at the end of the day, like when we think back, how different of people are we from, say, the 17th of Tammuz, right? When we do our first fast day, and it's the beginning of like those 3 weeks, right? And you have those 9 days of Av. And then from Av, you go into Elul, and you do all this tshuva, and you go into Rosh Hashanah. And then from Rosh Hashanah, you have the intermediary days, and then you go to Yom Kippur. And then after Yom Kippur, we go through this whole process of Sukkot. And Sukkot brings us to Shmini Atzeres, and now we're here, right? So that's like a big idea, right? That's a really big concept, like to think about how different of people are we spiritually from then to now, right? Because it's like it's such a big concept of where we started at there to now. I mean, obviously we started doing Nissan, but I'm just saying this specific time and frame where we really are in the frame of starting the elevation to Rosh Hashanah. In a lot of ways, people could say it starts doing Nissan, but I'm saying like because you have Nissan and you have Shavuot and Pesach, so you have this, you have a thing, right? But then after that's over, it's like a gap, right? And you're building to something new, and that's Rosh Hashanah. So anyway, so that's where we're at. So just to talk about a few like concept statistics as we're building into this, because yeshiva, there's a lot of people reaching out. A lot of people want to learn, a lot of people want to connect, and a lot of the people, the vast majority of the people that are reaching out to me are African American. And the vast majority of those people who are African American have some type of connection to like, Hebrew Israelite culture or, or Islam or, the church. And people want to learn this. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, the goal initially was just to kind of like, have a small group of students and then kind of like build out, um, more the online, I don't want to say university, but the online learning center, right? Yeah, where people could come and be members and just really just learn how to like devote themselves to God completely, right? That's where we're going, right? But right now, what's going on is like a lot of people reach out, and the thing about it, a lot of people reaching out are leaders. They're people who are like in unique communities. There's a lot of like communities, it seems like around America that. Anyway, so this is the thing, and I think this is like a really important idea when we address this idea because this is going to happen, right? People have an affinity to people who are like them. So people who are African American, and there's millions of people in America who are African American that define themselves as descendants of Israelites. Now, if someone wants to say, "Oh, well, it's wrong, or it's not true, or it's not this," whatever the thing is, I hear all the arguments. I hear the pros arguments for it, and there's some very strong ones. And I hear arguments against it. And the main argument against it is this idea of integration, right? So say an African American person says, "Hey, I'm Jewish, I'm a descendant of whatever." And I mean, we talked about it. You got the Igbo connection, and then you have over like 150 years of African Americans, having the ability to express religious freedoms. That's what they did. You have thousands of African Americans who came to Israel when the state, offered, the ability for people to come and or with the right to return or whatever. So I mean, there's a lot of things going on, you know. There's a lot of things going on, but the thing is one particular lady reached out to me and she's like, she said she leads services in her community. I was like, okay. thing. But anyways, I was like, I was impressed, by like, just the whole situation. And the thing is, and this is the revolutionary part, because if you think about like Black thought, right? African American thought, Black thought in America, and we think about the idea like, because basically the yeshiva's perspective is like this. There's two perspectives of the world. You can see it in Bereshit, Eitz Hadas and Eitz Chaim, right? Eitz Hadas, Eitz Chaim, right? Tree of knowledge, tree of life. So what's going on? The concept of the tree of life is saying like, hey, my soul came into this world, and everything that Hashem provides, is given to me is tov, is good, right? I just asked Otina, how's your day? Tov, tov. Okay, everything's good, right? And then you have another reality where it's not about that. What it's about is my physical pleasure, how I feel, what I think about something, my comfort, whatever. And so you have good days and you have bad days. You have good mornings and bad mornings, and good mornings and good and bad afternoons, and bad afternoons and good evenings. You know what I mean? It's just a revolving world, because it's all about, if this brings me pleasure, it's good. If it brings me pain, it's bad. That's in the Eitz Hadas, right? This is Bereshit. Hashem is saying that this is the first challenge that Hashem poses to man. It says, do not think in the consciousness of external realities. You have to see that there's a system which I have commanded you, and your nourishment of your soul is sanctified or achieved through that. And the reason why you were created is to go through a series of expressions, to use your bechira, your free will, to ultimately connect to my will, and thus complete the purpose of why you were created. This is the Etz Chaim. So everything is good. People are against me. People are want to stop. Okay, but they're supposed to, because you're moving forward. You have to have resistance. What do you mean? You don't have resistance? You're climbing. You're changing. You're bringing kedusha. You're not going to have opposition. You're not going to have people say, "Hey, I'm not going to support that guy. I'm not going to. I don't want to see him successful." You have to have that, because only Hashem creates your success. It's never people, right? Hashem is your success. Now, Hashem brings angels into your life, people who support you, people who see, people malachim. You have to see them that way and treat them as such. And so the point is just saying like that. It's a chayim. But the other reality is the Roman, it's the Greek philosophy, which is it's the externalities. It's the externalities. So if we accept that, and we accept that the whole system in the West, America specifically, is based around this reality of externalities. And not only that, the difference between America and, you could say, the European reality in this way, or the older, or the Vatican, right? Oh, I'm getting conspiracy theory, But the Vatican, this world, their thing is they didn't have capitalism. So their thing was rooted in just a class system. You're this, you're that, you're like a royalty, you're a serf, you're a peasant, this type of thing. And you were stuck there. That was your reality, right? Now, with capitalism, through innovation, that can change, right? A peasant can turn into a royalty, or at least a serf, right? I mean, if hopefully I'm saying it right. But the point is just saying there's a middle class, whatever that is. I don't remember. I don't remember what they taught me. But the point is just saying is that, so capitalism comes in America, and it creates a reward system. Like, you get rewarded for making black art. You get rewarded for, being a Democrat or Republican or left wing or right wing and all these positions, as were in other societies, are just kind of like, well, why does it matter? You're always going to be, in this class, and that's it. And so just accept it and live your life, have fun, find happiness, love, in all these ways. So so we so that's the reality we're dealing with. So now when you deal with people, like when you deal with the African American community that has more access to information about Torah and history and God and all these things, and not just African Americans, everybody, but I'm just speaking specifically about African Americans, because a lot of people reaching out, and we're going to have to expand the yeshiva. And so the thing is just saying that we have to really like think this thing out, because all of Black thought as it relates to spirituality has been connected to externalities. We're Black, we're separate. This is our perspective. We're Black Christians, we have our Baptist church, we're Black Jews, we're Hebrew Israelites, we're Black Muslims, we're the Nation of Islam, right? We're Black Power people. Everything is like a sub thing, and that's fine. And that's fine, but we have to be mature and look at it and say, hey, guess what? All that was great, but it was coming from an illusionary reality. And I'm not just talking about Black. I mean, you can look at the same thing: Asian, white, whatever, Hispanic. The whole thing's illusionary because I'm just speaking from my background as a Jew. You know what I'm saying? There's Jews that come from, but the Jews were the only ones that got this conversation because everyone else is that their neshamas are not high enough to even to understand that the physical world is just a mishu, right? It's just residue. It's just residue. The physical world is just a residue. So if you making up your determination of what reality is or what solutions are on the residue, I can't. We're not in the same world. We're not in the same world, right? Um and so that's a very important mechanism, right? Because if people want to come into spirituality and they're like, hey, well, this is my heritage, right? It was took from me or was stole from me or this or any of these other like poisons, right? Because we're talking about the neshama. I don't care about the externalities. The people who stood on Mount Sinai were a combination of different nations and only a certain people that were descendants of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, right? It was mixed multitudes, and it was those people. So it's just like, so what is Hashem telling us by that? Wouldn't it just make sense that all the people who were in Egypt enslaved? Well, I mean, why would a person not want to leave? Like it's gruesome, it's terrifying, it's a horrible existence. But there's people who didn't leave, and there's people who did. So what is God trying to tell us just in that? And then not only that, there's people who have nothing to do with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov who saw the light force of Hashem through the Makot, through all these things, and they said, "Hey, we want to join you guys." Right? So that opens up the conversation of what binds these people together. Right? Hashem said, we're in Parsha Noach. We're going to go into Lech Lecha soon, right? And Lech Lecha should be a very big moment for us because it's like that's who we are. We're Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu is us, right? Abraham planet Earth that's on a spiritual journey. That's we're learning about his with Yaakov and Yosef came out of that, and eventually, Moshe Rabbeinu and Mount Sinai. All these things happen, right? This is all Abraham, but we're supposed to we're Abraham too, right? We're Abraham too, right? And so when we look at that, but the thing is to say that like spirituality as it's been presented in America has been based around externalities, around ethnicities, about color tones, about economic class, all these things, and because of that, we've all suffered spiritually. Spirituality has not made it happen for us because, and that's why we went to money. That's why we're so focused on materialism because it's like, well, if the world's about externalities, I need more pleasure. But if the pain that I'm going through at times or the lack that I'm going through is just as holy as the times when I'm plentiful, then that's a different perspective on reality, right? So when people want to come and enter the Torah, they can't enter the Torah like, oh, trying to find themselves from a racial identity that was created by, uncircumcised men, right? They have to come into the Torah and say, no, I have a soul, and so does all of humanity, right? So does all of nature. So are there angels, right? And I'm connected to all these things because we all come from the same source. Now, physically, it may present itself that the tree is different from me. The tree is different, but it's also the same, meaning that we both come from the Ein Sof. And the Ein Sof is an expression of the creator. So accepting that point, then it's like, well, if I'm approaching the Torah, why do I need this dynamic? Now, if I want to say, like, I don't need to prove myself, right? Because it's not a club, it's a covenant with God. So my covenant with God is not based off of an ethnic identity that was created in America. The true reality of who I am is in the Torah. I'm a neshama that's in a goof that is going to have various experiences in yomim, days. And I have a Torah, right? That my ancestors received on Mount Sinai, right? 3,000 years ago. And so now this Torah instructs me how to deal with this yomim, the different days. And so based off of my purity or my ego, it determines my pleasure in life. It's not because of how much money I make. It's not because of my social status. All these things have nothing to do with my covenant with God. But people don't want to give you that freedom. They want you to believe that no, your covenant with God is connected to the system. It's connected to things that they control and they control the perceptions. You don't control my connection, God. Yes, I have to go and work. God has decreed that, right? A man has to support a family. God has decreed that, but that's it. That's it. I think it was a funny story. I don't know. I'm not saying it fully, but it's a story about Rabbi Meir Balanes, the Tana, and they were saying that like he gives charity every day or every week, whatever it was, to like Torah scholars, and he has so much money, and he splits it up into like he has enough money like to eat, and then enough money for like he gives for tzedakah, and enough money whatever. I don't remember. I don't know the stories well, but just the principal idea is still in my head. And so they asked him, well, like, well, what about your kids? Like, do you have money for how do you give your what's the money for your kids or whatever? And so his response is saying that, well, the Torah says that a righteous man will never go hungry, right? So if that's the case, if my kids are righteous, they're never going to go hungry. If they're not righteous, why would I want to give them money anyways? I don't know, something like this. But the point is just saying you want to determine my self-esteem about how much money I have in my bank account, where there's a third party that controls how much money in my bank account, what economic opportunities I have access to, and all these different things. So like I don't control those things, but you at the same time that my self-worth is determined by these things. That doesn't make sense to me, right? And so, when we're talking about like, African American person or any person, white person, especially white people too, they want to come and learn. It's just like, no, you have to let go of this racial identity that was created by a secular world. It doesn't exist. There's no spirituality. There's no Kedusha in knowing that you're black. Tell me, where's it at? I mean, is it in Torah? Where is it? Show me. Show me. Some halakha, something, we got thousands of years, somebody had to speak about it, no? Ah, the class system in America was created by uncircumcised people and people who did not fear God. But yet you want me to identify as it. And then people say, oh, well, you're not proud of yourself. You're a sellout. You're a sellout, you're a sellout, you're a sellout because you are not going along with the narrative that is in the universities about who you are and how you should. You should be proud of your blackness. You should be proud of who you are. I'm proud of my humanness. I'm proud of the humanness of my ancestors who went through oppression and segregation because of their skin tone. The skin tone is only the reason why the hatred was able to be acted out and justified and organized. But the reality is, it was light against darkness. My ancestors were light. These people were darkness. They wanted to annihilate the light. It's still going on today. What do you think Hamas is? They don't care about no state. They want to kill Jews, period. You know what I'm saying? Like, they'd be like, hey, because you think it'd be all good. You do a peace treaty, give them some money, they can feed their kids, no more fighting. They're good, right? Those fools don't care about that, bro. They don't care about that. They have a mission, right? So anyway, so the point, where we're at is just saying, like, as we grow this conversation, right? As we grow this conversation, it's just like we have to be, in a real mindset, right? This is a real mindset. Like, I mean, what are you going to mislead people? Are you going to do another generation of, hey, we're these people, we're separate? No, I'm a part of all of humanity. That's what I'm saying. I tell people, like, people come at me. It's like, don't come at me like, oh, were you the chief rabbi, African American community? Yeah, fine, but I don't see myself like that's a department. I see myself as a teacher to all of humanity, and you should too, right? Every a large part of planet Earth knows my story and my life. You know, the life of my ancestors, my life of my community. I'm talking about in present day, the last 400 years. So I already have an emotional affinity. They use the speeches of leaders from my community, leaders that were elected by my grandparents and great grandparents and great grandparents and great great grandparents. So it's just saying that like this is I am that, right? So for me, it's just like, well, why are you trying to say like I should no, I'm connected to neshamas, to souls. Now, some of the souls, because we live in a 1% reality, they're going to gravitate towards what we're doing is because, yeah, they're going to see me and they're going to be, oh, well, this person is like me. So I'm going to assume that, you know, they're going to be kind to me or nicer to me because I grew up around people who were nice to me and people who weren't so much like me weren't as open, right? That's a normal thing. That's why people like, because people who are Spanish, like Spanish teachers, they talk their Spanish language. And so that's going to happen. But the point is saying that to teach a philosophy around externalities, that's not the future. That's not the future. That's not even the present. You know, it's like can't mislead people and be like, oh yeah, well, you know, you need to we over here, we're different, we're separate. It's like, no, everyone's connected. We're all souls. Like it's a new logic. We have to get rid of these externalities and accept that we're all neshamas that come from the Ein Sof that came into this world for a correction. That's it. That's the revolution. Go, you could say God, you could say Allah, you could say Hashem, you could say, whatever you want to call the infinite source. We got clear language in Judaism. You know what I'm saying? We've been talking about this for a long time. But you know, um, but the main point is just saying that you have to have a philosophical approach, right? It's one thing to, talk about, the Torah and Judaism and all these different things, which is good, right? Which is good. But the point is saying um, you have to have a philosophical approach if you're going to grow a movement, right? And no, 1 second, I'm just going to the studio. Okay. Okay, so you got to have a philosophical approach if you're going to grow a movement, right? And so, people want to do movements around ethnicity, but we've already seen that in America. We've already seen, okay, I'm the black group and, we're this and we're the true people. And I'm not talking about the Hebrews, I'm just saying in general, like any approach or like say like, other racial groups or, you know what I mean? Like everyone has their thing or somebody has some supreme leader or, you know what I mean? These like culty type things or whatever. So we've already seen that. And the thing about it, because we've already seen it, there's people waiting to identify and attack those things before they grow, right? Like that's why I was talking about the whole Igbo thing, right? So we know, because we know Igbos, right? That many of them have a whole history going all the way back to the Second Temple period in terms of tradition. That could be traced directly to the Second Temple period, right? Now, if I went around and I promoted that idea, and I've talked about it, you've heard me talk about it, right? In public, but I've heard the responses to it as well, right? Which are not as public, which are, Evo saying like, oh, well, that's not true. And those people are crazy and don't listen to them and blah, 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 and this, blah, blah, blah. Because Christianity came in the 19th century and converted everybody. And they built institutions and frame of thought. So I could say it to you, maybe I could say it to some people, and they're like, yeah, man, we know the truth. But in terms of, I don't think that point is bigger than than having people connect to God. Right. So for me, holding and fighting that point and say, oh, well, these people are part of this agenda and this and blah, blah, blah. You could do that, but then you're wasting time. Right. And then think about it. Another problem you have, and we talked about this before, is that you have to use their definitions. So if I talk about Black people, if I talk about the transatlantic slave trade, if I want to talk about, the Igbos, if I want to talk about the diaspora of Jews that went into Africa after the first and second temple period, I could go into that, but then they have a whole team of historians that could refute everything I'm saying. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam b'rei pi adamah. So, so how am I helping people if I do something that is guaranteed to fail? Sorry, I'm just eating some chips. I just have to eat some. I just haven't. Oh, one second, one second. So yeah, so that's a real question we had to ask ourselves. It's like creating another congregation based around the reality of a Greek and Roman philosophy, which is based around externalities. To me, that's whack. And you can't win. But if you took another perspective, which is saying, hey, my argument is discounting the race theory at all. I'm not accounting for it at all. What I'm saying is that the present world and the future world is the world of people that understand that they're only seeing the limited reality of their fellow human being and even nature. And there's a whole energy force inside of inside of or around inside of and around of this physical entity that you have in front of you. And so to truly connect to it, it's not just through the logic of the five senses, but even a logic and rule system that goes beyond that. And that's all we're saying. We're not saying, oh, everybody has to be Jewish. No, but the natural order of the world is halakha. The Jews just have the a commandment to keep the halakha. But the natural order of the world of Malchut, right? We're learning Malchut, all the levels of Malchut is the laws of the Torah are expressions of the physical laws of this energy realm called Malchut. So when we're talking about dealing with land a certain way, when you're talking about dealing with the woman a certain way, when you're talking about dealing with money transactions, when you deal with things of God and ritual and connection to the different energies throughout the month, this isn't it's not just like, oh, us Jews, we do this. Us Jews are commanded to do this, but the reality is these are the principles of the building blocks of all of existence for all humanity. So that has to be taken into account. One second. Yeah. So so if you're going to teach spirituality, you have to have a philosophical approach if you're going to movement. So the philosophical approach of the yeshiva is that we want to learn the Torah from the basis of the neshama. We talk about this, we live this. I'm just talking about it out loud because more people are coming in. Um, the examination of the human being is through the neshama. Who I am, what I am, what I'm not, is based around the neshama. The soul, the different levels of the soul, the parsufim inside of the soul, how the soul receives, how the soul gives, the purpose of the soul, the challenges that the soul has. All these things we've been learning for months is the basis of a new world because that conversation equalizes everything. Any type of separation from humanity or superiority to humanity, you're guaranteed failure. You'll get energy, you'll get people around, but it's from the Yetzer Hara. It's from the evil inclinations, from the egos, from taiva and gaiva, ego, all these things. All right. So that's just a point on that, and it's just something we got to address, and move forward on. Hold on. I'm going to bring up, but that's the future. And so if I went and talked to a group of kids in college, I'm just saying because I'm speaking about African Americans. So say I go to like a HBCU, I'm not going to talk to them about this like lame connection, genetic connection that we have. I'm not going to do that because you're going to have a bunch of guys in there that's going to be able to refute it because they're going to bring their little stupid books that were, christened by their university because of donors and other reasons. So these guys are going to be sitting in the front row battling me. But if I go to a HBCU or any university in the world and I talk about the neshama and I talk about the transformational process, and then I show them that like the understanding of the soul has been strategically took out of our consciousness by saying it's a religious term. It's not a religious term. It's just as much of an existence as trees and birds. The same thing that Torah talks about birds and trees and fish. Can we not learn about that because it's too religious? Because the Torah speaks about it in creation. The same thing with the soul, the Shema. So that's a conversation that you can't beat me in that conversation. They can't be any of you in that conversation. Who could beat you in that conversation? You know what they have to do to beat you in that conversation? They have to say, hey, you know what? The soul doesn't exist. That's it. You're not going to win the crowd with that. Right? Hold on. Bringing up number 3. Oh, wait. No, we're at 15. That's what we're at. We have 15, y'all. Hold on a second. Let me bring up the screen. Yeah. You're not going to be Rabbi Mordecai down the stretch if we're talking about the soul, baby. You can't compete with that. But you can compete with other things. We're not that. Okay. All right. So maybe we should go to 14. Chalul Shala Daver. All right. Ish Lanu Sheni Devarim. Okay. So here's a sum of two things. As a result of the Ein Sof actions, this is one. These are two things. One thing is a result of the Ein Sof action and the execution of that action. It is a result that reach us, and these are within limits. However, the way in which he executes the actions is concealed from us, and without this, and he says it's concealed from us, and this is without limits. The limit results of the works of the residue. Ah, but the work has to be executed. Is it Mishu or Misho? Anyway, but the work has to be executed, and his execution is without limits. For the performed by the Ein Sof plus to be he who acts without limits. Thus we see what's rooted in the residue exists only through the unlimited. But if in limits, the residue would have a function by itself without the need of the unlimited. I'm not clear exactly on that point. In the continuity of the endless world, in that light expressed in a limited state, and that limited state being known as the sense itself is referred to as Mishu, right? Which is residue, right? And so this residue is an expression of the slight of the endless world being fully manifest. Shehal Valatid Tala Talit Meni Menihiga Et Mishu Hanaga Vesider Mimish Mamash. The unlimited actually governs and orders the residue directly. So you get it is right. And at the same time, he executes his work in the aspects of unlimited limitlessness. So we have unlimited form and an unlimited form. This is Ratzon, not the creator itself, but just the Ratzon. For in this way, even though the accomplishment works follows a different path, the ways of bounds and limits, its entire destiny is laid down by him and his government is under his control. Let me explain. The unlimited possesses a unique property of ultimate perfection, and in his ultimate perfection, he is entirely good. As we explained earlier when we were speaking about his unity, before him there is no evil, and it is only when his perfection is concealed that evil can exist. But as soon as his perfection is revealed, evil does not exist anymore. As it says in Isaiah, he will consume death forever. Legilot Yehudot Lebederek Bevarech Ha'olam Mashlomato. Okay. He says, in order to reveal his unity in the clearest way, he conceals his perfection and instituted a way of imperfection in order to create the govern imperfection creatures. This is the residue. Even if God's creatures could obtain the ultimate perfection, he could not obtain his perfection, for since they are created beings, and they would never obtain the level of the creator. Indeed, as much so as the residue came into being through the concealment of perfection. Right? We get that. Through the concealment of perfection, which is the unlimited reality, through the concealment of perfection, which was the limited reality, we have the mishu, the residue, our reality. We are the residue, not to put us down. The residue came into perfection through the concealment of perfection. Many deficiencies and imperfections are rooted in it. The truth is that the deficiencies are intended to make it possible for the creatures to exist on different graded levels and to draw closer to the perfection gradually, level by level. This is our life, right? Every day we're trying to go higher and higher through our tefillah, through our learning. That we should not that it would not be possible if there were no bounds and limits. For the unlimited contains no levels, and accordingly, he is perfect from the very outset. Amnam veshiti becha bechinot chai lechol lechayot. Hari Mishu Haze. However, this residue could come into being in two ways. Either it could have been subject to a single perfected law governing imperfected creatures in a way that it could never overcome its imperfection. Alternatively, it could come into being subject to a single law, which is very deficient, which is very deficiencies are gradually corrected until they obtain the perfection that was concealed at the outset. Okay, so you're talking about the two levels of Mishu. What is Mishu? Everything we see around us, including ourselves. So he's saying there's two expressions of this Mishu. One is something that imperfected creature in such a way that it could never overcome its imperfections. And then there's others that have imperfections, but they're able to overcome them. And then by overcoming them, they see this internal perfection. I guess this is really big, right? This is going to change the way we see life. Ve'atin lacha mishlala ze devri mishal. So he says, let me illustrate you an example. Reward and punishment indicate a lack of perfection. The state of complete perfection, everything must be good. With the concealment of perfection, the government hangs in the balance, whether to confer goodness or the opposite, depends on man's deeds in the lower realm. It is rooted in the residue, which contains everything connected with reward on one hand and punishment on the other. Everything is prepared and ready, waiting for the arousal from below. Initiatives in the lower world, or I guess his actions, but things could have gone, in on this way forever, with the righteous receiving their reward and the wicked receiving their punishment. This would have been the case if it were not for the fact that the residue is governed by the unlimited. So okay, wow. This could have been the case if it were not for the fact that the residue governed by the unlimited. However, since everything in the residue is governed by the unlimited, it must be that the pathway of the residues do not remain as they are, but continue to reach perfection. For this reason, there is a limit to the period of choice of reward and punishment. The world exists for only 6,000 years. The residue is thus like the wheel that turns through so many degrees until it completes the entire circle. We were just talking about that, right? The soul goes through this process, correction, and it achieves it. And at the very end, there will be a perfected rest, right? Rav Ashlag talks about this. So it says, Nimsa Sheha Am Ha'ein Sof. So he says, Blessed be he who hafu ala be shalomot be talati be talavo to afilu ma. So he says, thus we see that it is in the Ein Sof, blessed be he who acts in his eccentric perfection on his plan of limitless. It is the Ein Sof who executes every action within limits. You get it? It's no separation. It's pure light, just in different expressions. And just as the execution and the actions carry out on the perfection, so too the intention of the action is to bring everything to perfection. It is in order to accomplish this purpose that the actions is executed within limits and without perfection. And that is the benefit of this. And that even though the intermediary is imperfected, for the work is deficient, nevertheless, the results of everything is brought to complete perfection at the end of all cycles. Okay, so we're at Gimel, and okay, Gimel's work, Gimel's work, Gimel's work. Wow, wow. Gimel's work, bro. Okay, okay. Sorry. So we're gonna obviously Gimel. Um, wow. As a conduit to continue the conversation, is this idea of just he's building that understanding of the relation between the Ein Sof and the limitless world and the residue itself, and seeing that everything's coming from one source, the intelligence. There's no breaks. There's no new dynamics. There's no this. It's all one. Please, anybody want to jump in and share any ideas, please? You're listening. Oh, Tanil, you have anything?
Yeah, Bakashem. So, just as we keep going deeper into Ram Call's teachings, it's just I feel like he's really laying out the purpose of concealment, like why Hashem concealed, his perfection. And it's like the like deficiencies aren't the imperfection was designed this way. So deficiencies are actually like a progress, like a tool for progress in a way. Like we only can get closer to Hashem through limitation. If his light was just manifested, there would be no free will, there would be no movement, there's no way to approach because it's absolute, it's complete emanation. But as you go through these different grades, it gives structure, allowing us to actually move with Hashem, to move closer to Hashem. So it's like without Hashem concealing himself, we don't have free choice, right? So you have the perception of evil. It's not evil at all. It's just a dimming of light, but that gives room for free choice. It gives you room to progress within yourself, to decide, okay, do I go towards more light or do I go towards more darkness? But without that perception, without that, there's no movement whatsoever. So it's really giving you a way to kind of view life in a sense. Like you were saying earlier, everything is Gamzul Tova. There is no evil. That's just a perception. That's just a layer completely. When Hashem created the world, he made room within himself. So if Hashem is essentially good, how can there even be such thing as evil? So it's really just fine tuning your sight, using the Torah to view everything through the lenses of Hashem, to understand his considerations. And now you move throughout the world with that vision. And you don't have separation. But you have to have the perception of separation to realize everything is united, if that makes sense.
It's a beautiful point. It's a reminder to the concept of Keter. Keter is also understand as crown, right? And that's the highest level in the cuff. But we also understand crown is to be king. So a kingship is an expression of connection to all things, right? And what I'm saying is that when I remove myself from, like Otino saying, when I remove myself from the doctrine of Western society and how Western society has taken religion and spirituality and and also reverted it to a series of externalities for like marketing and consumption and purchasing, right? And so when I remove myself from that and I just focus on exactly what the Torah teaches, because Ram Call is just teaching the Masurah. This isn't like some guys, like some mad genius in some closet. No, he's just teaching what his teachers taught him. He's just clarifying what the Arizal taught, right? The Arizal it comes from Masurah. So it's just saying that, the Arizal is trying to explain Rabbi Shimon, right? And so it's just saying the Zohar. So it's just saying that Ram Call's not like just giving us his like, oh man, we found this genius rabbi, we should follow him. No, he's just giving us the tradition. We don't follow rabbis, we follow God. But there's specific rabbis that, appeal the Torah they teach affects our soul because our souls are kind of more connected to this guy. Like we're obviously have a very big affinity with the neshama, the sparks of the Ram Calls neshama. Right? We're on two of his safers back to back. Right? Mishalat Yisharim, and now we're learning Kilak Pirkei Chokmah. Right? So that's the thing, and we're bringing it out, and that's just the point. It's just like when we talk about human revolution, we have to bring people to the level of the soul because anything else is academic. If I say I'm black, I'm African American, who determines what that means? I don't. I don't, and I don't have any language that puts me in a position to dictate what that means. But when I talk about the soul as a Jew, I do. I have it. It's very clear. There's no you know, there's no um I mean it's clear, you know what I mean? And so like, when we want to bring people to spirituality, it's like, yeah, I mean, are there ethnic connections, this or that? But the point is, does your soul need the Torah? If your soul doesn't need the Torah, cool. Like you know, you got some ethnic identity. You know, you read about it in a book. You know, you make your connections. Very good. I mean, that goes for everybody. That goes for the guy who calls himself a Reformed Jew, right? He doesn't keep any Torah. No, I'm Jewish. What does it mean? What does it mean? I'm Jewish. I don't care about being Jewish. I care about being connected to God. I care about the light source, the life force of the Creator filling my neshama through the performance of the mitzvot, which are what? The governing laws of reality. People want to make it religious. It's not religious. It's reality. It's reality. This is the world. There's gravity. There's all these different. There's wind. There's oxygen, carbon dioxide. All these different things. It's the same rules that exist in that way that the scientists can come up with. We don't even know if they're right, but the things that they come up with, the same way they have that they have systems to it, so do we as Jews. And so the point of reality that we're working off of is this idea of saying that, hey, the future reality is for us as human beings to connect to our neshama, and our neshama to connect to our bodies in a righteous way, and our neshamas connecting to the mineral, plant, animal, and human kingdom in a righteous way. And all that encompasses our relationship with the Creator. That's it. That's it. When I eat, I acknowledge the Creator. It's not religion. We could make it that. I acknowledge the Creator. When I finish eating, I acknowledge the Creator. My wife is permitted to me at certain times of the month, and other times she's not. There's certain foods I eat. There's certain foods I do not. Why? Because these foods have the life force of the Creator. These foods do not. Being physical with my wife during these times of the year or this time of the month, it's not going to bring me light. It's not going to bring her light. You know what I'm saying? So it's just saying like going on and understanding that is very, very, very important because we're not. This isn't religion. This is this is what the world is. We're just connecting to it. Anyways, we're gonna do another class. I think at like 6:30. People from India should maybe join in. I don't know what's going on, but anyways, we're gonna do another class later on, 6:30, 16:30. Not 6:30, but 16:30. So, anyways, that's the thing. You guys feel free to join, but we're gonna do weekly Parsha. We're in Parsha Noach, so we gotta make some sense. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.